Hey, great. Good to see everybody again, and happy to be sitting down with Chris Gore. Chris Gore is a pastor here at Bethel Church, and we are spending time with him today because he's got some stuff to offer within the space of what we've been talking about, autism awareness, working with children of special needs. He's actually the father of a child with special needs, but he's also got a really unique journey in seeing some healing come to people that are on the autism spectrum. So we want to take some time and just hear from him and his journey. Chris, how are you? What's happening? Good to see you.
Hi, Lance. It's great to see you. And thanks so much for having me on here today. It's a real
Absolutely,
treat.
man. I'm so
Yeah.
stoked you're joining us, and yeah, excited to get into it. So I want to start more in the realm of healing. So as a pastor, you have been the overseer, the director of Bethel's healing rooms for some time. So you've got this crazy passion and desire to be active in healing and equip the church in healing. But I want to talk specifically. You have seen some things happen within that kind of that space of autism, people with special needs, and you've seen healing. Can you talk a little bit about maybe how that journey started, and then maybe get into some testimonies, like things that you've seen God do?
Yeah, that'd be great. Lance, I think that the journey really obviously did start because, I have a daughter with special needs. And so, not to bore you with the past, but I mean, she's 26 now. Her name's Charlotte. And when she was born, she needed help, and she was, in a little bit of trouble when she was born. And then out of that, I went on this journey because it was my first daughter, and I was a very broken father, and I wanted to see my daughter healed.
Yeah.
And I didn't really care much for healing at that point. Sometimes we don't really care much for healing until we need it ourselves, right? And then we
Wow.
pursue after that thing. So
Wow.
I went after the revelation of healing. It's like, well, because there weren't really people that were healing. Healing wasn't so well known 26 years ago. I didn't know of anybody that was getting healed, or we'd talk a lot about it, perhaps,
Yeah.
but we'd never see it. And so I went on this journey of like, how can I get my daughter healed? I mean, if the Bible is true and healing is real, then why can't she have that? And so I went after this pursuit for her. I really was quite hurt. So, I know this sounds really awful, but the heart of this will be clear. I was almost delighted. I was almost delighted when I saw somebody else have a special needs child, because I'm like, why me?
Wow.
Why does this need to be me? And really, I mean, that's another whole subject, but really it was self-righteousness. Why do I get the special needs child when I know I read my Bible more than that person there and they got a healthy child? But that's another subject.
Wow.
That's self-righteousness. Anyway, so in
Like
that
there were
in that
like there was something wrong with you to get a special needs child. Like it was like a sign of, you know, heavy words, but like a curse or whatever. Wow.
yeah,
Wow.
I mean, it's very easy, and that's a predominant factor of what I see in many special needs parents. Is they're like, what have I done to deserve this? And I
Wow.
mean, that is a complete misunderstanding of grace.
Yeah.
Of that, it's not about what it's not about what we deserve.
Yeah.
Jesus took what we deserve so we can receive what he deserved.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, if we get special needs children or sickness, because of something we've done wrong, then we'd all be sick, wouldn't we? And we'd all be,
Yeah.
I mean, it's just not, that's not the gospel.
Totally.
And yeah,
Well,
so
I
I
want to
went,
say, but before we go into the healing thing, I want to talk about this because this is on my mind, like parenting a special needs child and the dynamics that you've been navigating as that parent and the things that you've learned. Like this is a big piece of the subject matter to me. So keep going.
absolutely. Yeah.
Keep
Yeah.
going.
So I went on this journey of reading everything I could on healing, and then realizing that in that journey, God actually healed my own heart without even really pursuing healing for my heart. I was pursuing healing for my daughter.
Okay.
And God really healed my heart, and he gave me such a heart and such a compassion for healing in general. Just wanted to see anybody healed. So I went on this journey of like, well, I'm just going to pray for everybody that if everything I can find that doesn't work.
Yeah.
I'll just find people. I mean, I used to go and sit in front of the ER at the hospital and wait for the people to come in on sick, and I'd jump on them and pray for them, and I'd I just find anybody, I mean, I still never saw anything healed for 10 years, but I had a passion for it. I just went after it. And, but then in that journey, I realized that, sometimes as I see the healers, like a preacher that carries a healing anointing, you'll hear them call out, in church, legs and backs and, whatever. But how often do you hear them call out, somebody with a special needs child, or, autism or whatever? And I realize that there's a bit of a void there of like, no one's really going after this. And so I just made it my quest in life. It's like, well, if Jesus paid for our sickness and our diseases and our conditions, then why can't these children be healed?
Yeah.
And I took an immense amount of flack over that. I mean, I've had hate mail, Lance. I've had so much hate mail. I'm not talking from the world. I'm talking from the church. People just really attacking me, saying, well, you've got no right to heal a special needs child because that's how God made them. And so I then had to really go on another journey to begin to help unpack that. It's like, so I wrote a book, and once I wrote the book on special needs, the hate mail went away. It really dissolved. And the book's actually, it's called the Perfect Gift. You can pick it up on Amazon. That's actually my daughter in the middle there, actually. And
beautiful.
And it's called The Perfect Gift, seeing the child and not the condition.
Okay.
So the language that I'd put it in is that the child is the perfect gift from God.
Yeah.
The condition's not. And what happens as parents is that in our quest, or just in our journey of life, we generally want to come to this place of like, for example, I have a special needs child and I've got no peace. And then somebody says, well, but that's just how God made them. And when we think that, we come to this place of peace. And it's like, okay, well, God made them like that. I need to learn to accept that. And we come to this place of peace, but it's really a false peace. And then when somebody like me comes along and says, well, they can be healed, I get snapped at and told, well, what right have you got to believe that? Because that's how God made my child. Because we make it our thinking that the conditions from God. And I'd like to just propose, I think it's more than a proposal, it's the reality, it's the truth, it's the Bible, that the child is the perfect gift from God, but the condition's not. So the identity is from God, the condition's not. So we need to pull those two things apart, not make them one. Because if the condition becomes the identity, you make them one. And then if I set a line like, I hate autism, you just thought I said, I hate your child.
Yeah.
Now, of course, I don't hate your child. I love the child. I hate the condition. I can see them differently.
Yeah.
And that's really been the journey. That was really the heart of even writing The Perfect Gift. It's really to bring hope and encouragement into families and to begin to bring truth in a loving way. Because I tell you, so many of these parents that I've met around the world, I do special needs meetings around the world. So many of these parents think that they are cursed, or that's how God made them, or it's because of their sin, or because of their forefathers' sin, or because of something they whatever. And it's not about that. It's not about what we've done or what we haven't done. Healing is about what He's done. And so I just want to bring, I'm in this, just been in this wonderful season of like really learning to bring hope and encouragement to special needs families, and bring the truth and see peace come into families that have special needs. Because I tell you, many families that I see with special needs, there's such turmoil in the home, and I understand the complex issues of having a special needs child, and the behavior, and so many of these parents are just completely worn thin. I understand that, and that's really my heart, is to bring peace into the family environment, that we can actually, that they can be strong, that they can be content, that there is hope, that really give parents permission to begin to believe again that our children can be healed, because that is God's heart.
Yeah. And within that journey of pursuing healing, like talk about some of the tension there, because obviously, you're looking for more, you're looking for health and wholeness, and yet here you are in the present, some deficiency, there's some element of lack. How do
Yeah,
you stay in that tension and love your child, love who is
yeah,
your, the one that God's given you, and celebrate them and enjoy the beauty that they carry, but yet pursue a healthier version of them? Like, talk about some of
yeah.
that process.
Yeah, and there absolutely is a tension, and I obviously live in a tension. My girl's 26 now; Charlotte's 26, and
Yeah.
we haven't seen breakthrough in her. She has seizure disorder and in a wheelchair, so we have that tension. But I think that what we need to, and that's where I began to. When I first started doing healing meetings for special needs kids, I would like to be able to tell you that I'm striking 100%. Every special needs child I pray for is healed. But that's just simply not the case.
Yeah.
And we've seen like about 85 children healed, but that's nothing into comparison to the amount we've prayed for. I mean, there's probably been thousands of children that we've prayed for. So it's a very, very small percentage. So we used to do these meetings and we'd call them special needs healing meetings. And it felt like I kind of like I guess I began to change the name of them, and I'm not watering down the gospel, but it just concerned me because these parents would come and you'd go for the healing, and if you don't see the healing, they walk away like, well, that I kind of feel discouraged because that didn't work,
Sure.
right? So I began to just call it special needs ministry.
Mm.
Right, because the heart is in that tension. The heart is not just ministering to the child, it's ministering to the family.
Yeah.
And I think that sometimes I walked into a cafe. I don't know, this is probably 10 years ago, and I walked into a cafe for lunch, and there's a prophet in there, and the prophet looked at me and he goes, how are you doing? I kind of wonder why a prophet asks you that. Shouldn't they say, you're doing well, how am I? He said, how are you doing? And I said, I'm having a really rough time, like I'm not sleeping very much, and it's just been a really hard season with Charlotte, and I'm not doing particularly well. And the prophet looked at me and he said, one of the reasons why you're not doing well is because the contentment is in your miracle.
Mm.
And it struck me so hard, and it's one of the key things I push, because when people say this to me all the time, Lance, they're like, when I see my miracle, it's going to be an amazing day and I'm going to be so happy. Now, if we pull the scales off that a little bit and look a little bit deeper into that subject, what they've really said is, I'm going to be miserable until I get my miracle, but when I get my miracle, everything will change.
Wow.
So therefore, has our contentment become in the miracle?
Yeah.
See, my contentment's not in the miracle. My contentment's because I have the answer. His name's Jesus.
Yeah.
So when I can live with that as the predominant focus in my life, is that I have Jesus and my contentment is in him, not in the miracle, I begin to live in this place of peace, and I begin to live in this place of hope. Will it be a great day when our children are healed? No question, it's going to be an amazing day. But isn't today an amazing day? Like, shouldn't we be living our best life now?
Yeah.
Whether we be in lack or whether we be in abundance, or whether we be sick or whether we be in health. It's like living to the fullness of what God, living in the present of what God has for each one of us right now, regardless of our circumstances. And then we begin to live in this place of joy. See, my joy, or our joy, shouldn't be dependent upon our external circumstances. Our joy should be because we've got Jesus.
Yeah.
And that's the message. That's really more the message of the book, and the message of what I'm carrying to parents today. And are we going after the healing of them? Of course we are. But these families often have no peace. And it's like you walk into a special needs family and, the kids yelling and mum and dad are yelling at each other. I heard a statistic that I think it's something like 90% of special needs families end in divorce because of the pressure and the stress within the family. And it's like, well, it's hardly a conducive environment for the child to be healed in when mum and dad are screaming at each other. So I'm kind of really going after that in this season of really going after like bringing truth and bringing contentment and bringing peace into the family environment, that the family can thrive because if mum and dad can thrive from the head of the house, the head of the household, suddenly there's this peace that comes into the household and we produce this conducive environment for the child to be healed rather than this hostile environment where there's always anger and there's, just yelling and, and what have you. So it's like a two-pronged thing. Yes, I want to see the child healed, but primarily I want to see the family healed, because if I can see the family healed, we create this atmosphere for the child to be healed.
Yeah, and I think like what I was getting at with that question, I mean, it's hard to have a healthy mindset when all of your hope is staked on this like event of healing. Like there's no abiding there. So you're talking about like, no, let's abide and let's live and let's love. And yeah, we can pursue change, healing in this case,
Absolutely.
but we can like abide in today with a sense of hope and promise and take care of each other's needs, celebrate the good that we have instead of just look at, man, that this condition's got to change. And until the condition changes, everything sucks. Right. So I love,
Absolutely.
and this is exciting what you're sharing, how profound. And that stuff is laced in your book, I'm assuming too, huh?
Yeah, it is. I mean, it comes some of it's simple. I mean, for example, like, what if we learn to celebrate the small?
Yeah.
I think we need to be really careful, Lance, that we don't miss the miraculous because we're looking for the spectacular.
Yeah, that's good.
It's like, a child getting out of a wheelchair is a spectacular miracle, but
Mhm.
are we only going to look for the spectacular?
Yeah.
Like my girl, she's nonverbal and
Yep.
she can say mama and papa, right? But when she can say car, she loves to go in the car. So we're going to drive today and we're going to go in there, and I stop and she'll say car. And that's been a relatively new thing. Now, most of us, if I said, hey, my daughter can say car now and she's 26, most of us would be like, she should have been saying that 24 years ago.
Wow.
And it's like, but yet, what if we learn to celebrate in the small?
Yep.
Because when we can celebrate in the small and we celebrate in those small victories, we position ourselves for greater victories.
Yeah.
And so we just got to learn to celebrate every little thing, every little new thing. Find something new in the day that the child can do, and like jump up and down and get excited because the child's made a new word, or the child's done something different, or there's some achievement, rather than just sitting there saying, wow, should have been doing that 24 years ago. We'll celebrate when she gets out of the wheelchair.
Sure.
It's like, no, I'm gonna celebrate along the way. I'm not gonna.
Yeah,
Don't despise the day of small beginnings.
I love it.
Yeah.
So is there something, I mean, we're on the same subject when I'm asking this. Is there something you would want others to know about what families are walking through with children of special needs? Like just helping maybe those that are not in that circumstance understand what the journey may be like, and ways that we can, approach families with special needs and be useful or helpful or encouraging, or maybe ways that we do approach families with special needs and it's not helpful or it's not encouraging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we get all that. It's like we've had it all. We've had people come to us and say, well, God gives special needs children to special parents. It's like, oh, that's a kind of a religious statement. Like don't go and say that to people.
Yeah.
Well, you must be a special parent for God to give you a special needs child. It's like, show me where that's biblical. So I think we need to be careful with that. And then there's the other extreme where, we've had people come to us and say, oh my gosh, well, man, I'm so pleased my family's healthy.
Yeah.
It's like, feel like thumping them. You know, I mean, it's just you don't say that either.
Have you ever thumped him, Chris? Is there?
No, I haven't.
Okay.
In my mind, I have. You know, so I think that we need to be sensitive, and the reality is that many of these special needs families are struggling. They
Yeah.
really are struggling, and because there's a lot of tension and a lot of pressure that comes, and you know, and if you're at home, it can be an isolated and lonely life, because you know you have a special needs child and suddenly your friends have dissipated.
Mm.
You know, because you know, I look at my life, and it's like I can't, you know, growing up with Charlotte, there are many things that we wouldn't go and do with other families because, you know, her behavior, or her, you know, because she was in a wheelchair, or just physical limitations that we weren't able to do. And suddenly you find that your friends move on because their kids grow up and they're not at the same level as your kids. So
Yeah.
it's definitely been a lonely life. So I'd be really wanting to encourage people not to disband people, you know, because you know, it's like mum and dad sometimes, like, you know, even my wife and I, to go out for dinner, like we don't have babysitters in our life that are prepared. Well, not that she's a baby, you know, adult sitter, whatever you want to call it. Well, we don't have adult sitters that can come over and look after her, so we can go out for dinner. You know, we've got our wedding anniversary coming up soon. You know, we're gonna have to take her with us
Mm.
to a nice dinner, which is, it's not that that's a problem. We'd love to have her with us, but you know, to get that, I really encourage people to make sure that as a husband and wife is that they get a network of people around them to support them, that they can
Yeah.
actually go out and do, you know, to get a break from the environment. We as special needs parents need respite from the circumstances that we're facing 24/7.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I love that. That's something pretty clear. Like how can you wrap around families, offer support? Something simple as like, can you give some care, be a baby or an adult sitter on some level, maybe meal trains. I don't know. I
I
love
mean,
that.
even just, you know, even just the simple things like, hey, can I take her for a walk for a half an hour?
Mm.
You know, it's like that is, you have no idea of the 30-minute
Wow.
respite that would bring if somebody just said, hey, could I take your daughter for a walk around the block? You know, I
Yeah,
mean, she loves walking. She's going to sit there and she's going to be happy little camper being walked around the block, and it gives the parents a break. You know,
that's
just
great.
things like that. It doesn't need to be something really dramatic, like, you know, they're expecting you to take the child from them for 2 weeks. You know, it's like,
Yeah, I love it. That's so helpful, really practical. So back to the healing journey. Talk about some of the things that you have seen healed. It sounds like, well, knowing you, like I've heard you share some stories with like some children that were on the autism spectrum, and you've seen shifts there.
yeah, yeah. You know, a number of years ago, I had this revelation out of John 14, and it says, "My peace I give you, my peace I give out. My peace I give you, my peace I leave with you. Not as the world gives you peace, do I give you. Let not your heart be afraid." And the word peace means shalom. And shalom means the spirit that destroys chaos. It's an ancient Hebrew word, which means the spirit that destroys chaos.
Wow.
And autism and Asperger's would be like chaos going on in somebody's mind, right?
Mm.
I don't necessarily believe that it's a deliverance issue. I think that I get concerned when it's like someone says, "Can you come and cast the devil out of my child?" It's like, no,
Mm.
no. I don't think that they're possessed. I don't think that they have a demon.
Yeah.
It's just like, you know, just like you might have a broken arm, they just have a broken brain. You
Wow.
know, just because, but if you have a broken arm, it doesn't affect your behavior. But
Sure.
if you have a broken brain, it affects your behavior,
Yep.
which sometimes may look like it's devilish behavior, but it doesn't mean that it is. It's
Yeah.
just that their brain is broken, right? So my peace I give you, my peace I leave with you, my peace, my shalom I give unto you. The spirit that destroys chaos I give unto you. Well, as believers, we can only give away what we know we have. So what if we So I had this thought, it's like, what if we actually began to minister to these children of like, what if it was actually simpler than we thought? What if it was just a matter of loving them and giving away what we know we have? Or do we have a hurricane going on inside us?
Mm.
Like, you've got to be at peace. You've got to know that you're at peace with God. How do you give away that peace if you don't even know you're at peace with God? You know, so I just begin to love these kids, and I just hug them, and I'd say, hey, my peace I give unto you. Father, I just speak the shalom of heaven over this child right now.
Wow.
And that was it. Just a 5-second prayer, just really loving them.
Yeah.
But how would you feel? How would you feel, Lance, if you had a child of special needs and I'm the healing minister and I grabbed them by the head and said, you devil, come out of them? You know, it's like, and I raise my voice because somehow I think authority is in the raised voice.
Yeah.
You know, all as it does is upsets the kid, and you're probably going to punch me.
Yeah.
You know, well, if I was you, I'd punch me.
Definitely
You
going to
know,
trigger him, right?
you know, so it's just like I just begin to love on these kids and just be gentle with them. And that's really how the first breakthroughs that I saw was. The first breakthrough I actually saw was actually the second breakthrough. The first one I didn't find out for a couple of years after. Prayed for them at a conference and left. I found out 3 or 4 years later the child had been healed. But it was in Michigan, uh, Kentucky, I'm sorry, Florence, Kentucky, where a mother came to me after a meeting and said, I've got a special needs daughter with autism. Would you pray for her? And I said, well, but she's not here. And I said, well, of course I'll pray for you. And I just prayed and I said, you know, my peace I give unto you. You know, I said, go home and lay, the girl's name was Hope. I said, go home and lay your hands on Hope. That's just an awesome name. I said, go home and lay your hands on Hope and just say, my peace I give unto you. And she goes and she just lays hands on Hope. Hope was in bed and she just lays hands on Hope and she says, you know, my peace I give unto you. And the Hope from that day began to get better and better and clearer over the next few weeks.
Wow.
And it was probably only, that was probably what, maybe 12 years ago. But about 3 years ago, there's a knock at my door, and who's standing at my door is Hope. And Hope traveled to Reading to come and see me with her mum to show me the beautiful young lady that she developed into, and just a very functioning, normal member of society. And I just wept as we just embraced, and she thanked me for ministering to her all those years ago. And, you know, it's just a beautiful reunion of, you know, probably 10 years. When I first met the mum, she's a little girl, and now she's this, you know, beautiful 16, 17-year-old girl. I mean, I think she's probably about 21, 22 now.
Wow.
And that's really how that's how it's happened. Like the little boy in San Diego who was too scared to come into a church meeting, or I just went and sat on the pavement with him outside and just began to love on him, and just began to say, hey, you know, hey, we're friends. You know, it's just loving these kids. Hey, will you be my friend? And, you know, they're expecting something, you know, like, I'm gonna get my hands on you and cast something out. It's like, no, can we be friends? And he's like, we'll be friends. And mum's crying. And I'm like, what's going on? And he says, he won't be friends with anybody, or he just became friends with me, you know? And I'm like,
Yeah.
can I give you a hug? And he goes, yeah. And she's crying. You know, why? Because he doesn't hug anybody, but he's hugging me. I tell you, children are attracted to peace.
Yeah.
And I just began to minister to this little boy about, so anyway, I leave and I hear some great reports coming out of his grandparents of the breakthrough that he's having, you know, at least like he'd gone from a special needs class to mainstream to the top of that class within a couple months period. And anyway, so I'm back in San Diego I kind of forgot about the story, and I'm back in San Diego maybe 7 years later.
Okay.
And I share that story from the front, just because I'm in San Diego. I'm in the same city, but in a different region within the city.
Yeah.
And this tall young man, I'm 6'1", this tall young man, I tell you, he must have been 6'1", 6'2". He comes up at the end and he comes to me and he says, you know, hey, Pastor Chris, he says, You know that story you shared about that young boy with autism that you prayed for all those years ago in Carlsbad? I'm like, yeah. When you shared this morning, I'm like, yeah. And he goes, do you know that's me?
Oh, wow.
And he said, I just want to thank you for ministering to me. And I broke down crying. And I'm, you're kidding me. And he goes, that's me, and we just embraced. And the next time I went to San Diego, he just comes up to me and he goes, hey, it's me again. You remember me? And I'm like, of course I do. And he goes, you've got a lot of people to pray for here tonight. He says, do you mind if, like, would it be okay if I just join you? Would it be okay if I just go and minister to people? And I'm like, I'll just go for it. I said, I'll sit down once you minister for me, and to see this young man who had autism just begin to minister the love of Jesus so profoundly to these people,
Yeah.
it's like, and I love miracles, lads, whether it's your little finger that gets healed or a headache. I love miracles, but to see those generational impact miracles,
Yeah.
of somebody that really is struggling to be a functioning member of society. It'd be like someone that can't get pregnant, for example, and it's like, well, the family line's going to come to an end, but yet they conceive. And it's like that they produce a baby
Yeah.
that can now produce babies, that can produce babies, that can produce babies. It's a generational impact, and it's the same with autism and Asperger's. I've seen those, it's like, it's not that I understand, please don't get offended at me. I understand that you can be a functioning member of society with Asperger's. I understand that. Please, don't get all up. If you're watching this, don't get all upset because I called you a non-functioning member. That's not what I said. But some of them really struggle to integrate and be functioning members of society. And I want to see that. I want to see that. I want to see that. I want to see the body. I want to see the church begin to embrace these children, regardless of where they're at, rather than sidelining them, thinking, "Well, they're not a contributing member." They don't understand, and they marginalize them and push them to one side. It's like, no, start seeing the child. Start seeing the child and not the condition, and work out in your church how they can be integrated and how they can be used, and because they are a precious person that the Father loves.
Good.
They may have a disability, but that doesn't mean they're useless. And that's why I'm so appreciative of our church, is because we've created this environment where we have a special needs services. We have 2 on Sundays where they can come and be ministered to, and they can be actively involved, and not just treat them like somebody that's different, but treat them like they're actually valuable, because every life in God's eyes is valuable. Every single one has worth and contribution to give.
I love it. Is there any
Yeah.
details on the story you were sharing about the Carlsbad boy? Like you're with him on the curb, hugging him, and then years later you see him, like, that's me. Did you hear any of the details of his kind of progression out of autism, or kind of getting off
Yeah.
the spectrum? And
Yeah, I did. And most of the breakthrough stories that I've seen have been progressive over a
yeah,
short period or a medium term.
yeah,
Now, I think that's a really important question you brought up, Lance, because I think sometimes, let's just say a child with autism comes to me and we pray and we say, Father, I'm not making a principle out of this, but we lay hands and we say, my peace I give unto you.
yeah.
Did you know probably 99% of the children that we've seen healed have been progressive? There's only 3 kids that were healed instantly.
Yeah,
And how easy it would be to miss the miracle and say, oh, well, he prayed, it didn't work.
sure.
And then we despise the day of small beginnings
Yeah,
because we're looking for the spectacular
yeah. And that
rather than
progressive,
celebrating the small.
so the progressive, just over time, parents start to notice increased function, or
Yeah.
less of
And
the negative
sometimes
behaviors, or
over days,
yeah,
sometimes hours, sometimes weeks. Like,
yeah,
one boy, he went after he was prayed for. He's in the book, the story's in the book. He gets prayed for and he goes home, and on the way home he says, Mom, I just feel like somebody took a bag of rocks off my back.
Wow.
And he goes to bed and wakes up a different boy. And I've met him. He was in Dallas, Texas, and I flew to Dallas, Texas just to have breakfast with him, and I tell you, he's a lot of these special needs children, particularly in the area of autism, are particularly artistic.
Okay.
Right. And this is a very interesting observation, because he stood in front of me, and right before he got prayer, he ran back to his mum and he goes, I don't want to be healed now. And his mum said, why is that? And he goes, because I'm very artistic because of my autism. And he said, if I get healed, I'll lose my artistic skills.
Yeah. So
And
for those, because of Chris's accent, he's saying artistic, so creative. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, creative.
That's
right.
crazy.
And the
what
mum said,
happened with that boy that was like, hey, no way, I don't want this because I want to stay creative.
The mum said, do you not think that God's bigger than that?
Oh, that's good.
And he goes, yeah. So he comes and gets prayed for, and he's healed. And he's still a very creative young boy. I got artwork in my house that's from him.
Yeah. It's beautiful. Yeah. I mean, so encouraging, these stories. I love it. And I love like that we started the conversation with the dynamic of like, as you're pursuing healing, there's still now, and there's still a way to have peace. Yeah, such good insight, Chris. Anything as we're wrapping up that I haven't asked about that you wanted to share in the context of our discussion?
No, I think I feels like we've covered quite a bit of ground. Is that, but I think the thing is that I want to give parents permission to believe again, and I want to tell you, you're not cursed.
It's good.
You don't have a special needs child because you've cursed, and you don't have a special needs child because you've done something wrong, or you don't have a special needs child because there's some hidden sin in your life. It's like, my friend, that's not the gospel.
Yeah.
We see in John 9, who is it that sinned? Who is it? Why is he like this? Who is it? His mother or father that sinned? And Jesus said, it's neither that my name be glorified. And some people read that to say, well, he made us sick to teach us a lesson. It's like, no. He didn't give them autism in order that he can heal them, in order that he can get the glory. That'd be a divided house.
Yeah.
And so God didn't send sickness to teach us a lesson. He sent Jesus to teach sickness a lesson.
Mm-hmm.
But in the process, people say to me, well, how have you become today who you are? And I'm like, oh, that's very simple. Because God didn't send Charlotte to teach me a lesson and to form me into me, because he's not like a chess player, right? He doesn't move here and I'm going to force you to move here. That's called manipulation.
Yeah.
Right? He's not a controlling and a loving God. You can only be one. He's a loving God.
Wow.
Right? But he turns all things to good to those that love him.
That's good.
Right? So my daughter's taught me more about the kingdom than any man on earth has taught me. She's taught me how to love. She's taught me perseverance. She's taught me patience. She's taught me long suffering. She's taught me kindness. She has taught me faith. She's taught me Jesus. And so it's like I'm coming out the better person because of what I've gone through and going through. And so I just want to give parents the opportunity to begin to believe again.
It's good.
It's like I want to give you permission to believe again, that it's God's heart is for you. God's heart is for your family. God's heart is for your child. He's not holding something back from you. He's not making a decision whether he's going to heal you or not. He's already made that decision. That decision was made at the cross.
It's good. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for your encouragement, Chris, and really, really exciting and faith building to hear the stories of healing, and very encouraging to hear the wisdom of just the way you as a parent are walking through that journey, pursuing healing, but embracing today. And Yeah, so much wisdom and strength coming from you. Again, how do people connect with you? I know you mentioned how to find your book, The Gift. Is that?
Yeah, The Perfect Gift. The Perfect Gift, the best place to get it is on Amazon.
Yep.
There is there. I'll show it a bit closer. The Perfect Gift, seeing the child, not the condition. You can get that on Amazon. But connect with me. You can go to chrisgore.org.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. So appreciate your time. This is really valuable for our listeners
Yeah.
and for everyone that's on this journey. So
Yeah.
love
Thanks,
you.
Lance.
Good to see
Love
you.
you too. Thank you so much for having me, and peace to you all. And I just pray that this is just going to be a triumphant season for you.
Thank you. We received that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chris.
All right. Bless you.
Bless you.
Bye-bye now. Bye-bye.